Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation developing in Cleveland that requires the kind of honest, direct, and completely unfiltered analysis that this moment demands, because the story coming out of the Browns organization today touches on multiple threads simultaneously, and each one of those threads pulls toward a larger conclusion about the direction of this franchise and the treatment of its franchise quarterback that Cleveland Browns fans need to understand clearly and completely before training camp arrives and the rubber finally meets the road on everything that has been building throughout this entire offseason. Let us start with Dillon Gabriel, because his situation has now reached the kind of organizational clarity that removes the ambiguity that has surrounded it for months and that deserves to be reported directly rather than buried in careful language designed to protect feelings or maintain access relationships. The trade to Atlanta is dead. That is the verdict. The possibility that had been circulating since January, the scenario where Gabriel would follow Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons and compete for a roster spot in a familiar system under a coach who drafted him and who presumably believed in what he brought to the table, that possibility has been officially and definitively closed. Tony Grossi confirmed it plainly. The Browns' trade with the Falcons is not happening. Dillon Gabriel is not going to Atlanta. And the organizational framing around what happens next with Gabriel has shifted into territory that, when you read it honestly, points toward one likely outcome that was probably visible from the moment this offseason began. Gabriel is likely to be released. That is the analytical conclusion supported by everything being reported about his situation. The article detailing the Browns' final verdict on this quarterback situation was not subtle about the football evaluation underlying the organizational decision. Gabriel went 1 for 5 in his starts last season. He showed an inability to throw the ball downfield effectively. He demonstrated that the super processor reputation he carried into Cleveland when he was drafted did not translate into the kind of NFL-level decision-making and execution that justifies a roster spot on a team that has just invested an entire draft class in building around a specific vision for its offensive future. And critically, the reporting suggests that Talon Green, a sixth-round rookie who has been in the building for a matter of weeks, may already present a more compelling argument for the third quarterback spot than Gabriel does after spending significantly more time in the organization. Think about what that assessment says about how far Gabriel's stock has fallen and how clearly the coaching staff has communicated its evaluation of what he brings to this roster. When a sixth-round developmental pick drafted in the most recent draft is being discussed as a more compelling roster candidate than a player who has been in the building and has had NFL starting opportunities, the writing on the wall is not difficult to read. Gabriel's days in Cleveland are numbered, and the only remaining question is the timing and the mechanism through which his departure occurs. Now let us address the broader quarterback competition framing that the Cleveland Browns organization is currently maintaining publicly, because it deserves honest examination rather than simple acceptance of the organizational language being used to describe it. Todd Monken has continued to characterize the situation as an open competition. Watson, Gabriel, and Green are all described as having the potential to win the starting job. The organizational language maintains the appearance of genuine openness and genuine evaluation that includes every quarterback currently on the roster. And on a purely technical level, that framing is defensible. Training camp has not started. Preseason games have not been played. The formal declaration of a starting quarterback that Monken committed to making before the end of camp has not yet been delivered. But here is what the totality of observable evidence demands that we acknowledge about the actual state of this competition regardless of how the organizational language describes it. Shedeur Sanders was the starting quarterback of this team at the conclusion of last season. He was the starter going into the off-season program. He was first in 11 on 11 drills during minicamp. He has been wearing the helmet camera that reflects the coaching staff's deepest evaluative investment. The entire draft class was constructed around protecting and equipping him specifically. Andrew Berry stated publicly that he expects Sanders to have more command of the offense. Todd Monken confirmed that Sanders' reps would not be affected by the addition of Talon Green. Spencer Fano was selected at number 9 to protect his blind side. Every organizational decision of substance made during this offseason points toward one conclusion about who this coaching staff believes is the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. And the sudden emergence of reporting suggesting Watson has taken the lead, reporting that contradicts all of the above and that has been traced through careful analysis to sources that originate outside the coaching staff's football decision-making structure, does not change the weight of the actual football evidence. It simply adds noise to a signal that has been remarkably consistent throughout this entire process. The preseason is the moment that will cut through everything. That is the honest assessment of where the real information will come from when the organizational language and the media narratives and the ownership-level dynamics and the reporter sourcing questions have all had their turn generating controversy and confusion. When these quarterbacks line up in actual preseason games and actually execute against actual NFL defenses in competitive situations that cannot be managed through controlled practice environments or carefully released workout footage, the truth of this competition will be visible to everyone simultaneously and will be impossible to narratively reframe regardless of whose interests are served by a specific interpretation. That is what the preseason represents in this context. Not just a routine evaluation exercise that NFL teams conduct every summer. The actual definitive competitive test that settles questions that months of organizational drama and media controversy have left frustratingly unresolved. When Shedeur Sanders drops back against a live NFL defense in a preseason game, or when Deshaun Watson does the same, the footage speaks for itself in ways that no reporter's opinion and no ownership-level source and no carefully worded organizational statement can override. And here is the honest and uncomfortable truth that every Cleveland Browns fan needs to be prepared to confront heading into that preseason evaluation. If Watson clearly outperforms Sanders when those preseason games are played, that reality has to be acknowledged regardless of how uncomfortable it is and regardless of how much the surrounding organizational context suggests it should not be the outcome. Honest analysis requires the willingness to follow the evidence wherever it leads, and if the evidence on the preseason field points toward Watson performing at a higher level than Sanders in live competitive situations, that evidence matters. But the reverse is equally true, and it is the more likely outcome based on everything the offseason has shown about where each quarterback actually stands. If Sanders performs at a level that is clearly and demonstrably superior to Watson during the preseason, and all signs suggest that is the more probable result given the evaluative investment the coaching staff has made in Sanders and the visible disengagement Watson has demonstrated throughout this offseason, then there is no organizational justification for naming Watson the starter regardless of what his contract says, regardless of what ownership-level preferences exist, and regardless of what any reporter has published about his inside track on the starting job. Starting Watson over a clearly superior Sanders in the preseason would not be a football decision.
This is my opinion. This is no source. I don't need a source to tell me what I think might happen. And what I think might happen is if Watson stays healthy, he's gonna emerge as the starter. That doesn't mean Shedeur can't give him a good run for his money. I do think it's going to be a legit competition, but I think the entire organization is anxious to see, quote, the new Watson, after rehabbing for 14 or 15 months, physically, being in the right mindset. Could his natural talents that the Cleveland Browns have not seen to the extent that he showed in Houston, could he be closer to the Houston quarterback than he was to the one we've seen for 4 years? So I just think he's head and shoulders got the most physical gifts of any of the quarterback. Well, other than Taylor Green, but he's not ready. So I just think he'll emerge as the starter. We'll see how it plays out.
So Todd Monken obviously said, I'm not ready yet I'm not there yet. But he's kind of consistently said he wants to have a starter in mind going to training camp, which would be at the end of mandatory minicamp. Do you think that that's still the case?
Yeah, I mean, they will have 13 practices before we get to training camp, and these are full-scale OTA and minicamp practices, 13 of them. And by then, I think he will have at least his depth chart, not his starter, but his depth chart, 1, 2, and 3. And I totally expect that to lead off with Watson. Now, there's a very possibility that when we get to the first OTA session, what is it, May 14th or 18th or something?
17th, I think,
okay.
Or something like that.
We still may see Shedeur taking the first snaps at that practice. Okay, we may, but that's the first of 13, 10 OTAs and 3 minicamp. And I think by those 13 practices, he will emerge as a clear-cut starter. That's my opinion.
Interesting. It's your opinion, no source information there from Tony Grossi. Wide receiver is another very interesting roster position right now for the Browns after the draft. Tony, just looking at this, Cedric Tillman, is he on the team come September? That's like the one that stands out. Like are they going to be able to trade him?
It would be a tanking decision. It would be an organizational choice to sacrifice competitive performance in the 2026 season in pursuit of a future draft position that would allow Cleveland to select Arch Manning or another highly touted quarterback prospect in a future draft. And if that is what happens, the consequences for Sanders' relationship with this franchise are immediate and severe and almost certainly permanent. Let us be direct about this prediction because directness is what this situation requires. If the Cleveland Browns go through the 2026 season starting Deshaun Watson over Shedeur Sanders when the preseason evidence has shown Sanders to be the better quarterback, and if they then go into the following draft and select a first-round quarterback, Shedeur Sanders will not be in Cleveland after that. He will not stay. He should not stay. Because at that point, 3 years will have passed, and the organization will have demonstrated through its actions rather than its words that it is not committed to him as its franchise quarterback regardless of what his performance has earned and regardless of what the investment made around him during the 2026 draft was supposed to represent. Put yourself in his position honestly for a moment. You were drafted as the franchise quarterback. You came in and worked. You earned first-team reps at minicamp. You had the coaching staff put a helmet camera on you to capture every decision you make. Your general manager stated publicly that he expects you to have more command of the offense. The entire draft class was built around protecting and equipping you specifically. And then, through a combination of ownership-level interference and organizational dysfunction and narrative management that has nothing to do with your actual performance, you watch the starting job go to a quarterback who refused to talk to the media during mandatory minicamp activities and who has shown every sign of having emotionally disengaged from the entire situation. If I am Shedeur Sanders and that is the outcome, the answer is simple. Get me out of here. I have given this organization everything it asked for and more. I have performed when the opportunity was given to me. I have handled the controversy with dignity when public confrontation was the alternative. I have graduated with my degree and planned my continuing education and posted about elevation and lifting others while organizational forces were actively working to undermine my competitive standing. If the reward for all of that is watching a disengaged veteran with a massive guaranteed contract get handed the starting job for non-football reasons, then the right decision for my career and my development is to find an organization that will actually commit to me with the same completeness that I have committed to it. That is not bitterness. That is not an unreasonable response to unreasonable treatment. That is the rational conclusion of a competitor with options who has been given every reason to believe that his current organization values other things more highly than it values his actual performance and his actual potential. The Cleveland Browns reporters who have been shifting their coverage, slowly moving away from Sanders and toward a Watson-friendly narrative as training camp approaches, are doing exactly what access journalism produces when the winds of organizational preference shift. They are protecting their relationships. They are aligning their coverage with where they believe the organizational power structure wants the story to go. And the people paying attention, the people keeping receipts, are going to have a very clear record of exactly who said what and when as this situation continues to develop. Tony Grossi has been all over the place on this. His assessment of Sanders has shifted repeatedly as the organizational noise has shifted, which reflects either genuine uncertainty about what is happening or the kind of coverage adjustment that happens when a reporter feels the organizational pressure to realign their narrative with the preferred interpretation of the people who control their access. Either way, the inconsistency is worth noting and worth monitoring as training camp arrives and the preseason begins. Here is where everything stands, stated as clearly and as directly as the situation deserves. Dillon Gabriel is almost certainly done in Cleveland. The Atlanta trade is dead. His football evaluation does not support continued roster investment when developmental alternatives like Talon Green are being discussed as more compelling options. The quarterback competition between Sanders and Watson will be definitively settled by the preseason, which represents the only evaluation environment that cannot be managed, narratively reframed, or strategically positioned by any organizational voice or media figure with an agenda. If the preseason shows Sanders to be the clearly superior quarterback and the organization starts Watson anyway, it is tanking and it is wrong, and it will cost Cleveland their franchise quarterback within the following year. If the preseason shows Sanders performing at the level his entire offseason body of evidence suggests he is capable of, and the organization responds by naming him the starter and building around him with the full organizational unity and commitment that his performance would earn, then everything the Cleveland Browns have built during this offseason has a genuine chance to produce something worth watching in 2026 and beyond. The preseason is coming. The competition will speak for itself. And the entire Cleveland Browns organization, from ownership to front office to coaching staff to the media apparatus covering it, will be accountable for what it does with whatever the preseason shows. The receipts are being kept. The coverage shifts are being monitored. And Shedeur Sanders, who has done everything right throughout this entire process, deserves to have his performance meet an organization finally willing to reward it with the clarity and the commitment it has earned. Training camp cannot get here fast enough. Because the preseason truth is the only thing that settles this once and for all.